The snow fell in gentle flakes over New York City on Christmas Eve, covering the bustling streets with a blanket of white. William Harrington stood at the window of his penthouse office, watching the city lights twinkle through the snowfall. At 52, he had everything money could buy: a tech empire worth billions, homes across the globe, and a collection of cars most people only dreamed about. Yet as he gazed at families hurrying home for Christmas celebrations below, a familiar emptiness settled in his chest. His assistant knocked softly before entering. "The holiday party is starting, sir. The board members are asking for you." William nodded without turning. "Tell them I'll be down shortly." But he had no intention of attending another corporate event filled with fake smiles and business talk disguised as holiday cheer. After his assistant left, he grabbed his coat. Not the tailored designer one hanging by the door, but an old, worn wool coat he kept for the rare occasions when he wanted to move through the city unnoticed. 15 minutes later, he stepped out of the service elevator into the alley behind his building, pulling a simple knit hat over his gray-streaked hair. The transformation was remarkable. From billionaire tech mogul to ordinary middle-aged man taking a Christmas Eve walk. The freedom of anonymity washed over him as he walked toward Central Park. No one asking for investments, no one pitching ideas, no one wanting anything from him. Just another face in the crowd of last-minute shoppers and holiday revelers. 30 years, he muttered to himself, his breath visible in the cold air. 30 years building everything and ending up with nothing that matters. The park was quieter than the streets, with paths winding between snow-covered trees strung with twinkling lights. William followed his usual route, the one he took when corporate life became too suffocating. He'd built his company from a dorm room startup to a global tech giant, but success had come at a price. His marriage, friendships, and any chance at a family had all fallen away as he climbed higher. Now, with more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes, he walked alone on Christmas Eve, just as he had for the past 7 years. Near the east side of the park, something caught his eye. A small figure sitting alone on a bench illuminated by a nearby lamppost. William's first instinct was to keep walking. New York was full of stories, many of them heartbreaking, and he'd learned long ago he couldn't fix them all. But something about this particular scene made him slow his steps. It was a child, a boy perhaps 9 or 10 years old, hunched against the cold. The boy wasn't playing or waiting impatiently like most children would be on Christmas Eve. Instead, he sat perfectly still, staring down at something in his hands. William hesitated. He wasn't good with children. His few interactions with his employees' kids at company picnics were always awkward. But it was below freezing, and a child alone in the park at dusk on Christmas Eve couldn't be right. Probably waiting for a parent nearby, he told himself. But even as he said it, he changed direction, walking closer to the bench. The boy didn't look up. He was completely absorbed in whatever he held. As William drew nearer, he could see it was a photograph, dog-eared and slightly wrinkled as if it had been handled many times. The child's fingers traced the image with such gentleness that William felt like he was intruding on something deeply personal. It wasn't until he was almost at the bench that William noticed the tears. They fell silently down the boy's cheeks, freezing before they could drop from his chin. He wasn't sobbing or making a sound, just crying quietly while looking at the photo, his small shoulders occasionally trembling. William stopped, suddenly uncertain. He'd navigated billion-dollar deals and cutthroat boardroom battles without hesitation, but this small crying child left him completely at a loss. He glanced around looking for a parent or guardian, but the nearby paths were empty except for a couple hurrying along arm in arm, too wrapped up in each other to notice anything else. "Are you okay?" William finally asked, his voice sounding rough even to his own ears. The boy startled, quickly wiping his face with his sleeve and sliding the photo into his pocket. "I'm fine," he said, but his voice cracked on the words. William noticed the boy's coat was too thin for the weather, and his boots had a hole near the toe. "Where are your parents?" The child looked up then, and William was struck by eyes that seemed too old for such a young face, deep brown eyes filled with a wariness that no child should have. "My aunt is at a party," the boy said carefully. "She'll be back soon." William frowned. "She left you here? In the park alone?" The boy shrugged as if this wasn't unusual. "She said it wouldn't be long. Just a Christmas party at her friend's apartment. He pointed vaguely toward the buildings lining the park. How long ago was that? Another shrug. A couple hours, I think. William felt a surge of anger toward this unknown aunt. The temperature was dropping by the minute as night fell, and the snow was coming down harder now. What's your name? He asked, still standing awkwardly beside the bench. Elijah, the boy answered after a moment's hesitation. I'm William. He gestured to the empty space on the bench. Mind if I sit down? Elijah moved over slightly, making room. Up close, William could see the boy's face was red from cold, his lips beginning to take on a bluish tint. You must be freezing, William said. Without thinking, he unwrapped the cashmere scarf from his neck and held it out. Here. Elijah looked at the scarf suspiciously, making no move to take it. It's just a scarf, William said, feeling strangely hurt by the child's distrust, though he couldn't blame him. To keep you warm while you wait. After another moment's consideration, Elijah reached out and took the scarf, wrapping it around his neck. It was comically large on him, covering half his face, but William could see his shoulders relax slightly as the warmth enveloped him. Thank you, he mumbled through the layers of cashmere. They sat in silence for a few minutes, watching the snow fall. William felt oddly peaceful despite the circumstances. It had been a long time since he'd shared a quiet moment with anyone that wasn't filled with business talk or ulterior motives. What were you looking at? He finally asked. The photo. Elijah tensed, his hand moving protectively to his pocket. Nothing. Sorry, William said quickly. Not my business. More silence fell between them. In the distance, Christmas music drifted from somewhere, the familiar notes of Silent Night floating through the snowy air. It's my mom, Elijah said suddenly. So quietly, William almost missed it. Your mom? Elijah nodded, slowly pulling the photo from his pocket again. He stared at it for a long moment before hesitantly holding it out for William to see. The photograph showed a woman in military uniform, her smile bright against her dark skin, arms wrapped around a younger Elijah. They stood in front of what looked like barracks, both smiling widely at the camera. She's in the army, Elijah explained, a hint of pride breaking through his sadness. She got deployed again 3 months ago. She's in Afghanistan. William looked at the photo more carefully. The woman had the same deep brown eyes as her son, filled with warmth and strength. She looks very brave, he said honestly. Elijah nodded, taking the photo back carefully. She is the bravest person ever. His voice dropped to a whisper. She promised she'd try to call tomorrow morning. For Christmas, I'm sure she will, William said, though he knew nothing about military communications or whether such promises could be kept. Aunt Rita says not to get my hopes up. Elijah's shoulders slumped. She says Mom always makes promises she can't keep. William felt that flash of anger again. What kind of person said such things to a child about his mother on Christmas Eve? Sometimes adults have to do hard jobs, and William said carefully, jobs that take them away from the people they love most. It doesn't mean they want to be away. Elijah looked up at him, studying his face as if searching for a lie. Did you ever have to be away from people you love? The question hit William like a physical blow. Images flashed through his mind. Missed anniversaries, canceled vacations. The day his ex-wife had finally packed her bags, telling him he was married to his company, not to her. Yes, he answered simply. And I made the wrong choice every time. Something in his voice must have conveyed his regret, because Elijah nodded as if he understood completely. Mom says she doesn't have a choice, he said. She says she does it for me, so we can have a better life when she gets out. William thought about the hole in the boy's boot, his thin coat, and the aunt who left him alone in a freezing park on Christmas Eve. Whatever better life the mother was working toward seemed very far away. Your mom sounds like an amazing woman, William said. Elijah smiled then, a real smile that transformed his solemn face into that of a child again. She's the best. The smile faded quickly. I just miss her a lot. Of course you do. William checked his watch. The couple of hours the aunt had mentioned had now stretched to nearly 3, based on how long he'd been walking. The park would be closing soon and the temperature was still dropping. As if reading his thoughts, Elijah said, Aunt Rita is probably just having fun and forgot about the time. She does that a lot. The casual way he said it, as if being forgotten was a normal occurrence, made William's chest ache. Well, William said, making a decision. It's getting colder, and I could use something warm to drink. There's a cafe just outside the park that has the best hot chocolate in Manhattan. Would you like to come with me while you wait? We can leave a note for your aunt so she knows where to find you. Elijah hesitated, caution returning to his eyes. I don't think I'm supposed to go anywhere with strangers. That's very smart, William agreed. How about this? The cafe is right there. He pointed to the twinkling lights of a small shop visible just beyond the park entrance. We can sit by the window so you can watch for your aunt, and you can use my phone to call her if you want. Elijah considered this, looking from William to the cafe and back again. Finally, the promise of warmth seemed to win out over caution. Okay, he said, standing up and carefully tucking his mother's photo back into his pocket. But just until Aunt Rita comes. As they walked toward the park exit, Elijah staying a careful foot away from him, William felt something strange, a lightness he hadn't experienced in years. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he wasn't thinking about stock prices or board meetings or quarterly reports. Instead, he was wondering what kind of person would leave a child alone in the cold, and what he might be able to do about it. The cafe glowed with warm light against the darkening sky, its windows decorated with paper snowflakes and strings of tiny white lights. As William opened the door for Elijah, a wave of warmth and the rich smell of chocolate and cinnamon wrapped around them. Christmas music played softly, and the few customers inside sat in comfortable silence, cradling their mugs and watching the snow fall outside. 2 hot chocolates, please, William said to the barista, a young woman with bright red glasses who smiled at Elijah. Would you like whipped cream on those? She asked, looking at the boy. Elijah glanced up at William, seeking permission. Of course, William said. And maybe some of those cookies, too? He pointed to a display of gingerbread cookies decorated with colorful icing. Elijah's eyes widened. Really? It's Christmas Eve, William said with a shrug. If you can't have cookies on Christmas Eve, when can you? They found a table by the window with a clear view of the park entrance. Elijah immediately positioned himself so he could watch for his aunt, his small body tense with alertness even as he settled into the chair. Here, William said, pulling out his phone. Do you want to try calling your aunt? Elijah took the phone and carefully dialed a number. William watched as the boy's face fell after several rings. She didn't answer, Elijah said, handing the phone back. She probably can't hear it at the party. Their hot chocolates arrived, piled high with whipped cream and sprinkled with cinnamon, alongside a plate of cookies. Elijah looked at the spread with barely contained excitement but didn't reach for anything. Go ahead, William encouraged. Elijah picked up his mug with both hands, took a careful sip, and closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, a small dot of whipped cream sat on the tip of his nose. William found himself smiling. Good? It's the best thing I've ever tasted, Elijah said with complete seriousness, and William felt an unexpected warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with the hot drink. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, Elijah alternating between watching the door and taking tiny sips of his hot chocolate, as if trying to make it last as long as possible. So, William said eventually, you said your mom is in Afghanistan? Elijah nodded, wiping his mouth with a napkin. She's a sergeant. This is her 3rd tour. That must be hard for both of you. Yeah. Elijah traced the rim of his mug with one finger. But she says it's important work. She helps protect people who can't protect themselves. Pride crept into his voice again. And she's really good at her job. She got a medal last time. I'm sure she's exceptional, William said. What does she do when she's not deployed? She works at the VA hospital, helping other soldiers. Elijah broke a cookie in half, examining the pattern before taking a bite. But the pay isn't very good. That's why we live with Aunt Rita now. Mom says it's just temporary until she finishes her service and gets her degree. William nodded, putting together pieces of a story all too common. A single mother serving her country while struggling to build security for her child. What about you? Elijah asked suddenly. Do you have kids? The question caught William off guard. No, he said after a moment. No, I don't. Why not? William smiled faintly at the directness that only children seemed capable of. I guess I was always too busy working. What kind of work? I run a company. We make computers and software. Elijah's interest visibly sharpened. Like video games? Some of our software is used in video games, yes. That's cool, Elijah said, clearly impressed. My mom says I'm good with computers. At my old school, I was in a special program where we learned coding. Really? What did you make? A game where you have to solve math problems to defeat the bad guys. Elijah's face lit up as he described the project, his hands moving animatedly. My teacher said I have natural aptitude. That means I'm good at it without trying too hard. I know what it means, William said, amused. And that sounds very impressive. I can't do it much anymore, though. Aunt Rita doesn't have a computer, and she says the library ones are just for grown-ups. William frowned slightly. What about school? Surely they have computers there. Elijah's enthusiasm dimmed. I changed schools when we moved in with Aunt Rita. The new one doesn't have a coding program. He shrugged, trying to look unbothered. It's okay, though. Mom says when she gets back, we'll get our own place again. And maybe I can have my own computer then. William felt a familiar spark, the one that had helped him build his company from nothing, the recognition of talent being wasted through lack of opportunity. What grade are you in, Elijah? 5th, but I do 6th grade math. Impressive, William said, and meant it. He hesitated, then asked carefully, How long have you been staying with your aunt? Since Mom left in September. Elijah's focus returned to the window, scanning the snowy street. She said she'd try to be home by next Christmas, but that's a whole year away. William did some mental calculations. 3 months with an aunt who left a child alone in a freezing park on Christmas Eve. Almost certainly another 9 months to go. Something about the situation felt increasingly wrong. Does your aunt leave you alone often? He asked, keeping his tone casual. Elijah shrugged again, that same too-adult gesture. She works a lot, and sometimes she goes out with friends. He picked up another cookie but just held it, his appetite apparently gone. I'm old enough to stay by myself. I know how to make sandwiches and everything. William nodded, hiding his growing concern. I'm sure you're very capable. But even capable people shouldn't have to be alone on Christmas Eve. Elijah's eyes suddenly filled with tears, which he quickly blinked away. Mom always made Christmas special. Even when we didn't have much money, she found ways to make it feel magical. He swallowed hard. This is the first Christmas we've ever been apart. William reached across the table, hesitated, then gently squeezed the boy's shoulder. I'm sorry, Elijah. That's really tough. Elijah nodded, not trusting himself to speak. You know, William said after a moment, I'll be alone for Christmas too. Elijah looked up, surprise breaking through his sadness. Really, don't you have a family? Not anymore, William smiled sadly. I have employees who pretend to like me because I sign their paychecks. I have business partners who want things from me, but no family, not for a long time. That's sad, Elijah said simply. Yes, it is. William surprised himself with his honesty. But it was mostly my own doing. I chose work over people. I thought success meant having the biggest company, the most money. I was wrong. My mom says money isn't everything, Elijah offered. She says as long as we have each other, we're rich in the ways that matter. William felt something catch in his throat. Your mom sounds very wise. She is, Elijah agreed earnestly, the wisest person I know. His eyes drifted back to the window, checking once more for his aunt. An hour had passed, and the cafe would be closing soon. William had tried calling Elijah's aunt twice more, but there was still no answer. He was becoming increasingly convinced that the woman had simply forgotten about her nephew. Tell me about your coding project again, William said, trying to distract Elijah from his worry. The game with the math problems. As Elijah launched into a detailed explanation, William found himself genuinely impressed. The boy had a clear grasp of logic and problem-solving that most adults lacked. His eyes lit up when describing the algorithms he'd created, and William recognized in him the same passion that had driven his own success. You know, William said when Elijah finished, I started coding when I was about your age. My parents couldn't afford a computer, so I used the ones at the public library. Really? Elijah leaned forward, intrigued. And now you own a whole company? I do, William said. It started very small, just me in my college dorm room. But it grew, year after year. What's your company called? Elijah asked. William hesitated. Telling the boy would immediately reveal his identity as one of the wealthiest men in the country. For some reason, he wasn't ready to shatter the easy connection they'd formed. It's not important, he said instead. What matters is that I recognize talent when I see it, and you, Elijah, have real talent. The boy beamed. a flash of uncomplicated happiness breaking through his worry. The cafe owner approached their TA. "I'm sorry, but we're closing in 15 minutes, she said kindly. William checked his watch. It was nearly 8 o'clock and Elijah's aunt still hadn't appeared or answered her phone. The snow was falling more heavily now, the streets nearly empty as people settled in for Christmas Eve. "Elijah," William said gently, "I think we might need to come up with a plan. Your aunt hasn't answered and the cafe is closing soon." Fear flickered across the boy's face. Maybe she's looking for me in the park. Maybe, William agreed, though he doubted it. "How about we try calling her one more time?" Elijah nodded and dialed the number again on William's phone. This time, someone answered on the 4th ring. William could hear faint music and laughter in the background. "Aunt Rita?" "It's me, Elijah," the boy said. He listened for a moment, his face falling. "I'm at the cafe by the park entrance. You said you'd be back hours ago." Another pause. "Okay, I understand." "Yes, I'm fine." He handed the phone to William without being asked. "Hello, this is William," he said, keeping his voice level despite his anger. "I found Elijah alone in the park several hours ago." "Look, I'm really sorry," a woman's voice said, not sounding particularly sorry. "The party ran late and I lost track of time. I've had a few drinks, so I can't drive. Can he just take the bus home? He knows the route." William felt his temper rise. "It's Christmas Eve, it's below freezing, and you want a 10-year-old to take the bus alone?" "He's done it before," Rita said defensively. "Look, what do you want me to do? I can't drive and I can't afford a cab all the way out to Queens." William took a deep breath, calming himself. "I'll make sure he gets home safely," he said finally. "But we need to talk about this situation. Are you with Child Services?" Rita's voice turned suspicious. "Because I'm doing the best I can. His mother dumped him on me with barely any support. I never asked for this." "I'm not with Child Services," William said. "I'm just concerned about Elijah's welfare." "Well, unless you're offering to take him off my hands, I don't know what else to tell you," Rita said bluntly. "I'll be home later tonight, or you can drop him at Mrs. Chen's apartment next door to mine. She watches him sometimes when I work late." Before William could respond, she hung up. He stared at the phone in disbelief, then looked at Elijah, who sat with his shoulders hunched. "Staring down at the table, you heard?" William asked gently. Elijah nodded without looking up. "It's okay," he said in a small voice. "I can take the bus. I know the way." William made a decision then, one that would change the course of 2 lives. "No, you can't take the bus alone at night in this weather." He leaned forward, waiting until Elijah met his eyes. "I have a guest room in my apartment. Would you like to stay there tonight? We can figure everything out in the morning." Elijah looked uncertain. "I don't know. I promise you'll be safe," William said. "And tomorrow is Christmas. No one should be alone on Christmas morning." Elijah thought for a long moment, his young face serious with the weight of the decision. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "But can we call Mrs. Chen to tell her where I am? She worries about me sometimes." William felt a rush of respect for this child who, despite everything, still thought about others' feelings. "Of course we can. And maybe we can stop somewhere on the way to pick up a few things for Christmas morning. What do you think?" For the first time since they'd met, Elijah smiled fully, his entire face lighting up. "I think that sounds really nice." As they bundled up to face the snowy night, William felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. The simple joy of making someone else happy. It was, he realized with surprise, far more satisfying than any business deal he'd ever closed. William's car pulled up to the curb outside the cafe. A sleek black SUV driven by a man in a dark suit who rushed out with an umbrella despite William's protests. "I was worried when you disappeared from the party, sir," the driver said, holding the umbrella over them as they approached. Elijah hung back, suddenly shy. The fancy car and uniformed driver made William seem like a different person than the kind man who had shared hot chocolate with him. "It's okay," William said, noticing Elijah's hesitation. "This is Tom. He's worked with me for years." He turned to the driver. "Tom, this is my friend Elijah. He'll be spending Christmas with us." Tom's surprise was visible only for a moment before his professional demeanor returned. "Very good, sir. A pleasure to meet you, young man." Elijah nodded, still uncertain. "Before we head home, we need to make a few stops," William said. "First, can we call someone from Elijah's phone?" Inside the warm car, Elijah gave William Mrs. Chen's number. The conversation was brief, with William explaining the situation and promising to have Elijah call again in the morning. Mrs. Chen, who spoke with a heavy accent but clear concern for the boy, seemed relieved that he wasn't alone for the night. She said Aunt Rita does this a lot, William said after hanging up, not bothering to hide his disapproval. Elijah looked down at his hands. She doesn't mean to be bad. She just gets busy. William felt a surge of admiration for the child's capacity for forgiveness, though he didn't share it. Instead of commenting further, he turned to a more pleasant topic. Now, he said, I think we need to do some shopping. It's Christmas Eve, after all. Elijah's eyes widened. Shopping? But most stores are closed now. William smiled. I know a few places that will stay open for us. The first stop was a high-end department store where the manager was waiting at a side entrance, despite the closed sign hanging on the front door. Elijah stared in amazement as they were ushered inside the empty store, lights still blazing. Mr. Harrington, the manager said with a slight bow. We're honored to serve you this evening. What can we help you with? Elijah looked up at William with new understanding. Harrington? Like Harrington Technologies? William nodded, a bit embarrassed. Yes, that's my company. You're not just someone who runs a company, Elijah said slowly. You're the guy, the one on magazine covers. You're like super rich. William laughed at the boy's bluntness. I suppose I am. Does that change things? Elijah thought about it for a moment, then shook his head. No, you're still nice. I'm glad you think so, William said, touched by the simple assessment. He turned to the waiting manager. We need some clothes for my young friend here, and perhaps some other essentials. What followed was unlike anything Elijah had ever experienced. The staff brought clothes in his size: jeans, sweaters, warm pajamas, a proper winter coat, and boots without holes. William insisted he try everything on, making sure each item fit perfectly. This is too much, Elijah protested as the pile of purchases grew. Consider it an early Christmas present, William said. Besides, everyone needs warm clothes in winter. Their next stop was a toy store where, again, doors were opened specially for them. Here, William gave Elijah free rein, though the boy was hesitant at first, carefully checking price tags and putting things back. Today, don't worry about the cost, William told him gently. Just choose what you like. Slowly, Elijah began to explore with more confidence, his eyes lighting up at a display of coding kits designed for children. These teach you how to build your own computer games, he explained to William, who listened with genuine interest. By the time they left, they had bags of games, books, the coding kit, and a tablet with educational software. William had also discreetly asked the store to deliver several larger items to his apartment directly. Their final stop was a grocery store, where William realized he had no idea what to buy for Christmas dinner. His housekeeper had always handled such things, and she was away visiting family. What does your mom usually make for Christmas? He asked Elijah as they wandered the aisles. Elijah thought for a moment. She makes really good ham with this sweet glazed stuff, and mashed potatoes. And for dessert, we always have chocolate pie. That sounds perfect, William said. Let's get everything we need for that. Together, they filled a cart with groceries, Elijah providing surprising expertise on what ingredients were needed. William hadn't cooked a meal in years, but how hard could it be to follow recipes? It was nearly midnight by the time they arrived at William's penthouse apartment. Elijah fell silent as they rode the private elevator, clutching his new backpack filled with smaller toys and books. The elevator opened directly into the apartment, revealing a space that looked more like a museum than a home. All sleek surfaces, modern art, and minimalist furniture. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city's skyline, now a glittering wonderland of light seen through gently falling snow. Wow, Elijah breathed. You live here all by yourself? I do, William said, suddenly seeing his home through the boy's eyes. It was impressive but cold, impersonal. There were no family photos, no evidence of holidays or celebrations, nothing that showed a life being lived rather than just a space being occupied. The guest room is this way, he said, leading Elijah down a hallway. It has its own bathroom. The guest bedroom, like the rest of the apartment, was elegantly furnished but sterile. William made a mental note to make it more welcoming tomorrow. Are you hungry? He asked. I realize we never had dinner. Elijah nodded. A little. In the kitchen, William managed to put together sandwiches while Elijah sat at the counter, still taking in his surroundings with wide eyes. "This place is bigger than our whole apartment building," he said, biting into his sandwich. William smiled. "It's too big, really. Most of the rooms I never even use." After they ate, William showed Elijah how to use the shower in the guest bathroom, leaving him with new pajamas and a promise to be just down the hall if needed. When he checked back 15 minutes later, he found Elijah already fast asleep in the massive bed, his small form nearly lost among the pillows, his mother's photo placed carefully on the nightstand. William stood in the doorway for a long moment watching the boy sleep. Something about the scene made his throat tight. He'd built an empire, amassed more wealth than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. Yet his home had never felt so right as it did with this child sleeping under his roof. Back in the living room, William realized there was one glaring omission in his apartment. No Christmas tree, no decorations, nothing to mark the holiday that would arrive in just a few hours. He hadn't bothered with such things in years, seeing no point when he was always alone. He picked up his phone and made a few calls. Being one of the richest men in the world had its advantages, particularly when you were willing to pay handsomely for last-minute requests on Christmas Eve. Then he opened his laptop and began researching. First, he looked up Elijah's mother, finding her service record and current deployment information. Next, he contacted his head of security, a former military officer with connections throughout the armed forces. "I need to arrange a video call to Afghanistan, to a specific service member," he explained, "for tomorrow morning. It's important." His security chief didn't question the unusual request. "I'll see what I can do, sir. The time difference and military protocols make it challenging but not impossible." "Make it happen," William said simply. "Whatever it costs, whatever strings need to be pulled." His next call was to his lawyer, waking the man from a sound sleep. "I need information on custodial rights," William explained without preamble. Specifically, what legal standing an aunt has when a parent is deployed overseas, and what options exist if that guardian is neglectful. The lawyer, accustomed to William's direct approach, asked several clarifying questions. "I understand this is unusual," William said finally, "but I've encountered a situation that requires immediate attention. A child's welfare is at stake." "I'll have preliminary information for you in the morning," the lawyer promised, "and I can refer you to a colleague who specializes in family law." William's final call was to his personal assistant. "I need you to clear my schedule for the next week," he told her. "All meetings, all appointments. Reschedule everything." "Everything?" she repeated, clearly surprised. William Harrington never took time off, not even when he'd had pneumonia the previous year. "Everything," he confirmed. "Something important has come up." After hanging up, William sat in the darkness of his living room, looking out at the snow-covered city. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he felt purposeful in a way that had nothing to do with business or money. The feeling was foreign but undeniably good. Around 3 a.m., William heard a small sound and turned to find Elijah standing in the hallway, looking lost and a little frightened. "Can't sleep?" William asked gently. Elijah shook his head. "I had a dream about Mom. I woke up and forgot where I was." "Come sit with me for a bit," William offered, patting the sofa beside him. Elijah patted across the room and climbed onto the sofa, drawing his knees up to his chest. "Your home is really nice," he said, "but it doesn't feel very Christmassy." William smiled. "You're right. I haven't celebrated Christmas properly in a long time, but that's going to change." He hesitated, then added, "I've been making some calls trying to arrange a surprise for you tomorrow." "What kind of surprise?" Elijah asked, interest overcoming his sleepiness. "If I told you, it wouldn't be a surprise," William pointed out, "but I hope it will make tomorrow special." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the snowfall. William was struck by how natural it felt to have the boy there, how the empty spaces of his home suddenly seemed filled with possibility, rather than emptiness. "Mr. William," Elijah said after a while, his voice drowsy, "thank you for letting me stay here. It's way better than being alone." "Thank you for staying," William replied honestly. "It's better for me, too." He looked down a few minutes later to find Elijah had fallen asleep again, his head resting against William's arm. Carefully, trying not to wake him, William adjusted their position so the boy could lie more comfortably. As Elijah slept beside him, William found himself making plans, Not the business strategies that usually occupied his mind, but plans for Christmas morning, for the days to follow, perhaps even for a future that looked very different from his solitary past. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the city in a pristine blanket of white, while inside the penthouse something long frozen in William Harrington began, slowly but surely, to thaw. William woke with a start, momentarily confused by the weight against his side. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the living room in a golden glow. He looked down to find Elijah still fast asleep beside him on the sofa, both of them having spent the night there. Careful not to wake the boy, William checked his watch. 6:30 on Christmas morning. He gently eased himself away, replacing his shoulder with a pillow under Elijah's head. The boy stirred but didn't wake, his face peaceful in sleep. William stretched, feeling stiff from the awkward sleeping position, but somehow more rested than he'd been in years. There was much to do before Elijah woke up. The doorbell rang, and William hurried to answer it before the sound could disturb the sleeping child. He opened the door to find a team of people waiting with an array of large boxes and bags. "Mr. Harrington," the leader of the group said quietly, noticing William's gesture to keep voices down. "We have everything you requested. Where would you like us to set up?" For the next hour, the team worked efficiently and silently, transforming William's sterile apartment into something magical. A large pine tree went up in the corner of the living room, quickly adorned with lights, ornaments, and tinsel. Garlands appeared along the mantel and windows, twinkling with tiny white lights. Wrapped packages of various sizes accumulated under the tree, the items William had arranged to be delivered from the toy store the night before, now beautifully packaged with bows and ribbons. In the kitchen, another team member unpacked groceries beyond what William and Elijah had purchased, setting out ingredients for a breakfast of pancakes, bacon, and fresh fruit. As the team was finishing, William's phone vibrated with a message from his security chief. Video call arranged for 0900 hours. Technical team standing by to ensure connection. William smiled, relieved. That gave them plenty of time for breakfast and opening presents before the most important gift of all, a chance for Elijah to see and speak with his mother on Christmas Day. Just as the decorating team slipped out, William heard a small gasp from the hallway. He turned to find Elijah standing there, hair tousled from sleep, eyes wide with wonder as he took in the transformed living room. "Merry Christmas, Elijah," William said softly. The boy looked from the glittering tree to William and back again, mouth slightly open. "Did you do all this while I was sleeping?" William nodded. "I had some help. Do you like it?" Instead of answering, Elijah ran across the room and threw his arms around William's waist in a tight hug. Startled by the sudden display of affection, William hesitated only a moment before returning the embrace, a lump forming in his throat. "This is the best Christmas ever," Elijah whispered against William's sweater. "It's only just beginning," William promised. "How about some breakfast?" "I thought we could try making pancakes." Elijah pulled back, looking up with a grin. "You don't know how to cook pancakes, do you?" William laughed at the boy's perceptiveness. "Is it that obvious?" "Kind of." Elijah's smile widened. "I can show you. Mom taught me. We make them every Sunday." In the kitchen, roles reversed as Elijah confidently directed William in measuring flour, cracking eggs, and mixing batter. William found himself enjoying the simple task more than he would have thought possible, especially when Elijah declared his first attempt at flipping a pancake not totally horrible. They sat at the counter eating their slightly misshapen but delicious breakfast, Elijah swinging his legs happily as he described his mother's perfect pancake flipping technique. "After we eat, would you like to open some presents?" William asked, trying to sound casual despite his excitement to see Elijah's reaction. Elijah's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "There are presents? For me? Of course. It's Christmas, isn't it?" The boy's eyes darted to the pile under the tree, then back to William. "But you just met me yesterday. You didn't have to get me anything." "Consider it making up for lost time," William said. "Besides, I haven't had anyone to buy Christmas presents for in a very long time." After breakfast, they moved to the living room where Elijah approached the tree with a mix of excitement and hesitation, as if afraid the whole scene might disappear if he moved too quickly. "Go ahead," William encouraged, settling into an armchair. "They're all for you." Elijah knelt beside the first package, carefully untying the ribbon instead of tearing into the paper as most children would. When he finally opened it to reveal the advanced coding kit they'd looked at in the store, his face lit up with pure joy. "This is the
one I wanted."
Thank you. One by one, he opened the gifts. Books about space and science. Building sets, a telescope, warm clothes, and finally, a sleek laptop specially designed for young programmers. "This is too much," Elijah said, running his fingers reverently over the laptop's surface. "I can't accept all this." "Yes, you can," William said firmly. "Every child deserves to have their talents nurtured. You have a gift for technology, Elijah. This will help you develop it." The boy looked up, his expression suddenly serious beyond his years. "Why are you doing all this for me? You don't even know me." William considered the question carefully. "Sometimes people come into our lives unexpectedly, but exactly when we need them. I think perhaps we were meant to find each other yesterday." Elijah seemed to accept this answer, nodding thoughtfully. "I have something for you too," he said suddenly, reaching into the pocket of his pajama pants. "It's not much, but—" He held out a small object, a paper crane carefully folded from what looked like a cafe napkin. "I made it while you were on the phone last night. My mom taught me how. She says cranes bring good luck and happiness." William took the delicate creation, touched beyond words by the simple gift. "This is perfect," he said, voice slightly rough. "Thank you, Elijah." The boy beamed, then turned back to examining his new laptop. William placed the paper crane carefully on the mantel, positioning it prominently among the Christmas decorations. At 8:30, William glanced at his watch. "Elijah, I need to set something up in my office. Would you mind playing with your new things for a little while? I have a surprise I'm working on." Elijah nodded, already engrossed in the coding kit's instruction manual. William slipped away to his home office where a technical team was waiting to establish the video link to Afghanistan. "We've got the connection ready, sir," the lead technician said. "The military liaison has confirmed that Sergeant Davis is standing by. They've given us a 30-minute window due to operational constraints." "Excellent," William said, feeling a surge of anticipation. "Make sure the connection is stable. This is important." At precisely 9 o'clock, William returned to the living room. "Elijah," he said gently, "could you come with me for a moment? There's one more Christmas present I want to give you." Curious, Elijah followed William to the office where a large screen had been set up on the wall. William positioned Elijah in front of it, then nodded to the technician who stepped out of view and initiated the connection. The screen flickered, then filled with the image of a woman in military fatigues, her hair pulled back tightly, her face so similar to Elijah's that there could be no doubt of their relationship. "Mom," Elijah cried, stepping closer to the screen in disbelief. "Merry Christmas, baby," the woman said, her eyes filling with tears despite her broad smile. "I've missed you so much." William quietly backed toward the door, wanting to give them privacy for their reunion. But Sergeant Davis noticed him. "Mr. Harrington," she called, stopping him. "I don't know how you manage this, but thank you. The regular call schedule had me missing Christmas with my son. This means everything to us." William nodded, feeling slightly awkward under her intense gratitude. "It was the least I could do. Your son is an extraordinary young man." "He is," she agreed, looking at Elijah with fierce pride. "The very best thing in my life." William left them to talk, closing the door behind him. In the hallway, he leaned against the wall, overwhelmed by the emotions of the morning. The joy on Elijah's face when he saw his mother was unlike anything William had ever witnessed. Pure, uncomplicated happiness that no amount of money could normally buy. His phone buzzed with a message from his lawyer. "Have information on the custody situation. Can brief you when ready." William typed back, "Later today. Thank you." For now, he wanted to focus on making this day as special as possible for Elijah. There would be time for legal discussions later. In the kitchen, William began unpacking ingredients for their Christmas dinner. The ham would be a challenge. He'd never cooked anything more complicated than scrambled eggs, but he was determined to try. He found a recipe online and set to work, following the instructions with the same concentration he usually reserved for business deals. He was so focused that he didn't hear Elijah enter the kitchen half an hour later. "Mom wants to talk to you," the boy said, startling William into nearly dropping a mixing bowl. "She says it's important." William wiped his hands on a towel and followed Elijah back to the office. On screen, Sergeant Davis looked more serious now, though she smiled when she saw him. "Mr. Harrington," she said, "Elijah has told me everything. How you found him alone in the park, took him in for the night. All the wonderful things you've done for him." She paused, visibly emotional. "I can never repay your kindness." "No repayment necessary," William said honestly. "Your son has given me the first real Christmas I've had in decades." She nodded, then her expression grew concerned. "Elijah also told me about Rita leaving him alone. Again. This isn't the first time, but it's certainly the worst. I've been worried sick about the situation, but my options are limited while deployed." "I've been looking into that," William said carefully. "With your permission, I'd like to help find a better arrangement for Elijah until you return." Relief washed over her face. "That's exactly what I wanted to discuss. I have 7 more months on this tour, and I can't bear the thought of him staying in that situation. But I have no family besides Rita, and my savings won't cover other options." "I may have a solution," William said, an idea forming rapidly in his mind. "What would you think about Elijah staying with me until you return? I have plenty of space, resources for his education, and I've grown quite fond of him." He glanced at Elijah, who was watching the conversation with wide eyes. "That is, if he would be comfortable with such an arrangement." "Are you serious?" Sergeant Davis asked, looking stunned. "You'd do that for a child you just met? Sometimes a day is all it takes to know someone is important in your life," William said simply. She studied him carefully through the screen, the assessment of a mother weighing the safety of her child. "You're certain about this? It's a big responsibility." "I've never been more certain of anything," William replied. She turned her attention to her son. "Elijah, what do you think, honey? Would you like to stay with Mr. Harrington until I come home?" Elijah looked between the screen and William, his expression serious as he considered the question. Then slowly a smile spread across his face. "Yes," he said. "I think that would be really good." Sergeant Davis nodded, wiping away a tear. "Then let's make it happen. My commanding officer has already offered legal assistance on this end. I'll have my team handle everything," William promised. "And we'll set up regular video calls so you two can stay connected." As they worked out details, William felt a strange lightness in his chest. 24 hours ago, he had been alone. Wealth surrounding him, but no real purpose to drive him. Now, through the most unexpected of meetings, he had found something money could never buy. A chance to make a difference in a child's life, and perhaps find healing for his own lonely heart in the process. Later, as they worked together in the kitchen preparing their Christmas dinner, Elijah looked up from the potatoes he was mashing. "Does this mean I get to stay here? In this apartment with you?" "If that's what you want," William said carefully. "We could also look for a more suitable place. A house with a yard, perhaps, closer to a good school. Whatever would make you comfortable." Elijah considered this as he continued stirring. "I think anywhere would be okay as long as it feels like home." He paused, then added quietly, "This already kind of does." William turned away quickly, blinking hard against the unexpected burn of tears. In all his years of success, through building his empire and amassing his fortune, no words had ever meant so much to him as those simple ones from a child he'd met just one day before. "Yes," he agreed softly. "It does, doesn't it?" 1 year later, snow fell gently outside the windows of the brownstone townhouse in Brooklyn, covering the small front garden in a pristine blanket of white. Inside, a fire crackled in the living room fireplace, casting a warm glow over the Christmas tree in the corner. Not as massive as the one from the previous year, but far more personal, covered in handmade ornaments and twinkling lights. William stood in the kitchen doorway, watching as Elijah carefully arranged cookies on a plate. At 11, the boy had grown almost 2 inches in the past year, his face a little less round, his movements more confident. He wore a sweater with a complex pattern that his mother had sent from overseas, and his expression was one of intense concentration as he made sure each cookie was perfectly positioned. "Do you think Mom will like these?" Elijah asked, glancing up. "I followed her recipe exactly. She'll love them," William assured him, "especially since you made them yourself." The past year had brought changes neither of them could have imagined on that fateful Christmas Eve when they'd first met. After extensive legal work and with the full support of Sergeant Davis, William had been granted temporary guardianship of Elijah, an arrangement that would last until his mother's return from deployment. They had moved from William's sterile penthouse to this warm, brick townhouse in a family-friendly neighborhood with good schools. William had converted the 3rd floor into a home office, allowing him to work while being present for Elijah. He'd stepped back from day-to-day operations at his company, shocking his board of directors but standing firm in his decision. Some things, he had told them, are more important than quarterly profits. The transition hadn't always been smooth. There had been challenges, enrolling Elijah in a new school, establishing routines, learning to navigate the world of parent-teacher conferences and doctor appointments. William had hired a housekeeper who came during the day, but evenings and weekends were just the two of them, figuring things out together. Elijah had struggled at first, missing his mother fiercely despite their regular video calls. There had been nightmares, moments of withdrawal, days when he barely spoke. William had responded not with the impatience that once characterized his business dealings, but with steady presence and unwavering support, learning a kind of patience he hadn't known he possessed. In return, Elijah had brought light and purpose back into William's life. The boy's natural curiosity and enthusiasm were contagious, pulling William out of his workaholic isolation and into a world of science fairs, coding competitions, and impromptu trips to museums. For the first time in decades, William found himself laughing easily and often. "They're ready," Elijah announced, stepping back to admire his cookie arrangement. William checked his watch. Perfect timing. "The call should be coming through in about 5 minutes." They moved to the living room where a laptop sat open on the coffee table. Their weekly video calls with Sergeant Davis had become the anchoring points of their weeks, eagerly anticipated by all three. "Do I look okay?" Elijah asked, suddenly anxious as he straightened his sweater. William smiled at the boy's nervousness. "You look great. Your mom is going to be so happy to see you." The laptop chimed and Elijah quickly clicked to accept the call. The screen filled with the now familiar image of Sergeant Davis, though today she wasn't in her usual location on the military base. "Merry Christmas, you two," she called, her smile wide. Behind her was what looked like an airport terminal. "Mom!" Elijah leaned closer to the screen. "Where are you?" "That doesn't look like your usual spot." She laughed, her eyes twinkling with a secret. "That's because it's not. I'm actually at Frankfurt International Airport, waiting for my connecting flight." Elijah's eyes widened in confusion, looking from the screen to William, who was fighting to keep his expression neutral. "Connecting flight to where?" Elijah asked slowly. "To New York," she said, her voice catching slightly. "I'm coming home, baby. 3 months early. My tour got shortened because of unit reorganization." Elijah froze, processing her words. "You're coming home now?" "My flight lands tomorrow morning at 9, she confirmed. "I'll be home for Christmas Day." The boy's face transformed, joy breaking across it like sunrise. He turned to William, questions in his eyes. "Did you know?" he asked. William nodded, finally allowing his own smile to emerge. "For about a week. Your mom and I wanted it to be a surprise." Elijah launched himself at William, wrapping him in a tight hug before turning back to the screen, firing rapid questions at his mother about her flight, how long she'd be home, and whether this meant she was done with deployments. "Slow down," she laughed. "I'll answer everything when I get there. And yes, this is my last deployment. I've accepted a permanent position at the VA hospital in Brooklyn, starting next month. No more long separations." As they continued talking, William quietly slipped from the room, giving them private time to process the news. In the kitchen, he leaned against the counter, a bittersweet feeling washing over him. He was genuinely thrilled for Elijah. The boy deserved to have his mother back, to return to a normal family life. But William couldn't help wondering what it would mean for him. For a year, his life had revolved around caring for Elijah, their routines and shared experiences forming the foundation of his days. When Sergeant Davis returned, where would that leave him? Later that evening, after Elijah had gone to bed, buzzing with excitement about his mother's imminent return, William sat alone by the fire, nursing a glass of whiskey and thinking about the changes to come. His phone rang, Sergeant Davis calling back, as they had arranged. "He's finally asleep," William told her, "though I'm not sure how much actual sleeping is happening. He's too excited." "I can imagine," she said, her voice warm even through the phone connection. "William, I can't thank you enough for everything you've done this past year. You've given my son stability and opportunities I never could have provided. The person I spoke with today is happier and more confident than I've ever seen him." "He's an amazing kid," William said simply. "It's been my privilege to have him in my life." A brief silence fell between them before she spoke again, her tone more hesitant. "We need to talk about what happens next." "Of course," William said, steeling himself. "I understand you'll want to get your own place, re-establish your home with Elijah. I can help with that financially." "William," she interrupted gently. "That's not what I was going to say." He paused, confused. "It's not?" "No." She took a deep breath. "What I wanted to propose is that, if you're willing, the three of us might continue as we have been, at least for a while. You've become so important to Elijah, and uprooting him again so soon seems unnecessary when there's a better option." William felt hope stir in his chest. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "Your townhouse has that garden apartment on the ground floor that you've been using for storage. I was thinking perhaps I could live there. We'd be close enough for Elijah to have both of us in his daily life, but with our own separate spaces. A kind of extended family arrangement." William was momentarily speechless, the possibility of not losing Elijah entirely washing over him like a wave. "Unless you're ready to go back to your old life." She added quickly, "I would completely understand if—" "No," he said firmly. "My old life was empty. This past year with Elijah has shown me what really matters." He paused, organizing his thoughts. "Your suggestion sounds perfect, but are you sure it's what you want?" "I've had a lot of time to think during this deployment," she said. "Watching how you've cared for my son, seeing the bond that's grown between you. Elijah needs both of us, William. And if I'm being honest, I think having support as I transition back to civilian life would be a blessing." They talked for another hour, working through logistics and boundaries, both of them focused on what would be best for Elijah. The next morning, William and Elijah arrived at the airport an hour early, the boy practically vibrating with excitement as they waited at the arrivals gate. William had never seen him so animated, his eyes constantly darting to the doors where passengers would emerge. "There she is," Elijah suddenly shouted, breaking away from William's side and running toward a woman in uniform who had just appeared. William watched as mother and son collided in a fierce embrace, both of them crying and laughing at once. Sergeant Davis, Kate, as she'd asked him to call her, lifted her son off his feet despite her small stature, her face buried in his shoulder. William held back, giving them their moment. But Kate looked up, caught his eye, and waved him over. As he approached, she reached out one arm, including him in their circle. "Thank you for taking care of my boy," she said softly. "Thank you for sharing him with me," William replied. Christmas Day dawned bright and clear, sunlight sparkling off the snow-covered streets. In the brownstone, 3 people moved around the kitchen preparing breakfast together, finding their rhythm despite the newness of their arrangement. Kate had settled into the garden apartment, which William had hastily renovated over the past week, working alongside contractors to transform the space into a comfortable home. Elijah bounced between the 2 living spaces, delighted to have both adults within easy reach. As they sat down to breakfast, William looked around the table, marveling at how much his life had changed in just 1 year. From solitary billionaire to part of this unconventional family unit, a journey that had begun with a chance encounter in a snowy park. "I have something for both of you," he said, pulling 2 small wrapped packages from his pocket. Kate and Elijah exchanged curious glances before opening their gifts. Inside each box was a key on a simple silver keychain. "It's to a cabin in Vermont," William explained. "Nothing fancy, but it's on a lake, private, peaceful. I thought we could go there sometimes, weekends or school breaks. Somewhere that could be ours, away from the city. Our own special place," Elijah said, turning the key over in his hand with a smile. "Exactly," William agreed. "A place for our family." The word hung in the air, new and slightly tentative, but feeling remarkably right. Kate reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Family," she repeated softly. "I like the sound of that." Elijah looked between the 2 adults, his expression thoughtful. "You know what's weird? If I hadn't been sitting alone in that park, and if you hadn't stopped to talk to me," he shook his head, leaving the thought unfinished. "Some things are meant to be," Kate said, ruffling her son's hair, "even when they come about in unexpected ways." Later, as they walked through the snowy neighborhood to a community Christmas celebration, Elijah between them, William reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had led to this moment. One simple choice, to approach a lonely child on a park bench, had altered the course of their